Israel fractured. Once unified under David and Solomon, its people faced divergent paths. Two kingdoms, two destinies. In the north, Ahab's gilded throne masked a corrupted heart. His union with Jezebel introduced Tyre's deities, Baal's altars, and a legion of sycophantic prophets. It was a perilous era for truth-tellers. Divine prophets found no favor in the royal court, and defiance against the king carried severe consequences. Yet some souls always choose to speak out. Micaiah was such a person, his very name, meaning «who is like Yahweh». Зрение, служившее как мощный неявный вызов в пределах реальности, где истинный Бог был заменен бездушными идолами. Elevate your experience by subscribing for captivating Bible narratives and ring the notification bell to stay updated. Appreciate the content? Empower us through the thanks button. Become a channel member for exclusive perks. His origins remain shrouded in mystery, his calling a divine enigma. Not a celebrated prophet like Elijah, nor a performer of grand miracles, his voice, however, resonated like a hammer against stone. His words carried the undeniable weight of truth. King Ahab, preferring the comforting assurances of victory, blessings, and a brilliant future from other prophets, actively shunned him. Yet truth possesses an uncanny knack for reaching those who deliberately turn a deaf ear. Conflict loomed large. King Jehoshaphat of Judah journeyed to Ahab, intending to deliberate a strategic offensive against Ramoth-Gilead. The royal prophets were promptly assembled, each echoing the identical sentiment. "Advance, O king! Divine favor assures your triumph." The atmosphere crackled with jubilant chatter, extravagant assurances, and forecasts that felt prearranged. Yet Jehoshaphat sensed an unsettling unease, a deep-seated wrongness. His gaze fixed on Ahab, he inquired, "Are there absolutely no other prophets of the Lord we might seek counsel from?" The king's countenance hardened, a name surfacing in his thoughts, accompanied by a persistent, unwelcome feeling. Exasperated, he sighed. "Micaiah, son of Ilah, remains," he admitted. "Though I harbor resentment for him, he consistently delivers unfavorable prophecies about my reign." Jehoshaphat's brow furrowed. Ahab's response unsettled him. Encircled by flatterers, the Israelite king presented a worrisome spectacle. He adopted a more erect posture upon his throne, declaring sternly, "Refrain from such discourse, your majesty." "Summon him immediately." Ahab exhaled deeply, his eyes skyward, a clear sign of his displeasure. Micaiah was undeniably not his favorite person, yet unwilling to jeopardize his alliance with Judah, he dispatched a messenger to retrieve the prophet. The man shot off, navigating Samaria's bustling avenues and intricate side streets with rapid agility. Micaiah was discovered not amidst the opulence of the palace, but in a humble, unassuming locale that mirrored his own existence. Eschewing the attire of royal prophets and the king's influence, he lived freely. The messenger perceived the summons as an omen of impending adversity. He approached with caution, his voice hushed, akin to one counseling a simpleton before they jeopardized their very existence. "Micaiah, all the prophets echo the same forecast, victory assured. Exercise sound judgment. Emulate them. Offer words of encouragement." The prophet lifted his gaze gradually, a faint smile gracing his lips. It wasn't an affirmation, but the knowing expression of one accustomed to such counsel. His reply was immediate, clear as the dawn. "By the living God, I shall deliver only divine pronouncements." The herald grimaced. This would assuredly conclude poorly. Micaiah had zero skill in political maneuvering. He stubbornly refused to soften his language for the elite. Truth was his sole currency, and truth frequently found itself unwelcome. The procession toward the royal residence was eerily quiet. The seer ambled with the serene air of one utterly free of obligations, yet a gnawing unease gripped the messenger's gut. He sensed the impending storm, Upon arrival, the hall teemed with people. The royal prophets, brimming with fervor, showcased triumphant visions. Zedekiah, son of Chenaanah, brandished iron horns, proclaiming, "The Lord declares, these horns will be your instrument of annihilation against the Syrians until their utter demise." King Ahab smirked, radiating triumph. But then Micaiah's arrival cast a pall over the scene. The atmosphere shifted palpably. Micaiah stepped into the hall, immediately sensing the intense scrutiny. The air grew heavy, thick with anticipation and suspicion. The seer advanced deliberately, his eyes sweeping the chamber with the knowing air of a seasoned player. The fraudulent prophets continued to chant their triumphant pronouncements, cradling the king in a comforting falsehood. Ahab reclined upon his throne, complacent, bordering on indifference. Upon noticing Micaiah, his countenance shifted. The man exuded an aura that profoundly unsettled him. He was never one for mincing words. He'd never indulged the king's craving for flattery. Yet now, poised to deliver his usual blunt honesty, he'd reveal the raw truth, regardless of its impact. The king, arms crossed, feigned amusement. "Micaiah, should we aggressively pursue war against Ramoth-Gilead or concede defeat?" The prophet, head cocked slightly, responded with a surprisingly audacious, almost taunting tone. "Advance and conquer. The Almighty will grant you triumph." A hush descended upon the chamber. The king's gaze sharpened. Unease permeated the air. The cadence resembled other prophets, yet lacked genuine fervor, ringing hollow. Ahab's brow furrowed. He pressed closer. "I'm sworn to utter nothing but verity in his name. Unfold the truth, Micaiah." The prophet's serene smile vanished, replaced by grave concern. When he resumed speaking, his voice sliced through the atmosphere with chilling precision. "I envisioned all of Israel dispersed across the highlands, vulnerable like sheep without guidance. And the Lord proclaimed, they lack a leader. Let them return to their dwellings, unburdened and safe." A profound stillness descended. It required no profound intellect to decipher the omen's gravity. Ahab wouldn't survive the impending clash. The monarch momentarily lost color, but quickly regained composure. He squared his posture, scoffed, glanced at Jehoshaphat, and retorted with biting sarcasm and annoyance. "Didn't I warn you? He never foretells anything favorable concerning me." The assembly buzzed softly in accord, yet Micaiah wasn't done. His stare was unwavering, insightful, like he perceived truths unseen by others. The hush enveloping the hall was dense as a fog. None ventured to interfere. The seer stood still, eyes locked on Ahab as if witnessing realities beyond that chamber, brimming with sycophancy and treachery. With a forced half-smile, the king barely masked his irritation, his fist gripping the throne's armrest like a vice. Micaiah inhaled deeply, his resonant voice booming. "Therefore heed the Lord's decree. I beheld the Lord enthroned in glory, with all of heaven's legions arrayed at his sides." The Almighty inquired, "Who shall entice Ahab to his doom at Ramoth-Gilead?" A palpable tension filled the air. Unease rippled through the crowd. Micaiah pressed on. Then a spirit volunteered, "I shall dupe him." "By what means?" the Almighty pressed. "I shall become a deceitful voice in the chorus of his prophets," it answered. A palpable tension gripped the hall. Zedekiah, chief among the court seers, flushed crimson. The arrogance that had swelled within him began to collapse. Micaiah, unwavering, declared, "Hear this. The Lord has unleashed a deceptive spirit upon your prophets, and your downfall is sealed, O king." The atmosphere crackled with palpable tension. Zedekiah, his composure shattered, lunged at Micaiah, a stinging slap resonating through the chamber. "Where did the audacity of the Lord's Spirit originate to speak through you?" he sneered, desperately attempting to salvage his wounded pride. Micaiah's unwavering gaze remained locked on him. He gently traced his face, as if acknowledging the assault, and responded steadily, "That day will dawn when you're scurrying from room to room, seeking refuge." Silence blanketed the hall once more. Ahab glared at Micaiah, his eyes ablaze with fury. His fists tightened on the throne. His tolerance had evaporated. "Seize this man," he thundered, his voice saturated with unbridled rage. "Feed him meager rations until my triumphant return." Micaiah, undeterred, boldly proclaimed, "If you return unscathed, the Lord hasn't spoken through me." He then amplified his voice, addressing the assembled crowd. "Mark my words, people." The king averted his gaze, seemingly dismissing the dire prophecy. Deep down, he sensed it. The truth was out. The king's ears were closed. Guards hauled Micaiah away as his words lingered like a brewing storm. Ahab dismissed them as a bitter prophet's ramblings, yet a buried sliver of himself knew. This was a grave omen. It was a decree. Beyond, the sun blazed with fierce intensity, and the metropolis throbbed with anticipation of imminent conflict. Warriors were fastening their war plate. Artisans forged blades and pikes with relentless force, and tacticians drafted cutting-edge offensive maneuvers. The campaign against Ramoth-Gilead was now inevitable. No divination could alter that destiny. Knowing the stakes, Ahab, though swayed by flatterers and dismissive of divine warnings, wasn't entirely naive. Sensing a potential ominous destiny, he aimed to outmaneuver it. Before departing with a shrewd smile, Ahab privately urged Jehoshaphat, "Don your regal attire and boldly enter the fray as king. Donning a clever disguise, I shall infiltrate their ranks." Jehoshaphat, unburdened by doubt, acquiesced. Possibly he envisioned a cunning tactical maneuver designed to bewilder our foes, or perhaps his faith in the Israelite king proved overly generous. In reality, as the legions advanced, he stood resplendent in regal attire, a conspicuous target, while Ahab, concealed amidst the ordinary soldiers, found refuge within the throng. The sovereign was convinced he held the reins of his fate, reasoning that anonymity would shield him from death's inexorable arrow. Veiled amongst mortals, he aspired to outwit even divine decree. Yet celestial eyes remained ever vigilant, and the war, initiated with the allure of triumph, was poised to morph into an arena for the execution of destiny's verdict. As the sun relentlessly beat down upon the field of conflict, the assembled armies collided with earth-shattering force, the thunder of hooves and chariots reverberating as warriors' battle cries intertwined with the deafening clash of steel. Ahab, stripped of his majestic attire and donning simple armor, traversed the ranks, blending seamlessly amongst his troops, his heart brimming with the unwavering belief that his calculated strategy had successfully defied destiny. Conversely, Syrian commanders were explicitly instructed by King Ben-Hadad to target solely the king of Israel, disregarding all other adversaries. Their objective wasn't merely battlefield victory, it was the capture of Ahab himself. Thus, the sight of Jehoshaphat, regally adorned, triggered instant disarray among the Syrian charioteers. He appeared a prime target. Soldiers surged forward, encircling him with fierce intensity, and sheer panic gripped the king of Judah. He wasn't Ahab. He wouldn't perish here. In a soul-wrenching plea, he implored the Lord, and at the crucial instant, the soldiers grasped their error. This was not the king of Israel after all. Under cover, Ahab evaded detection as the strategy unfolded flawlessly. No adversary gave chase, no weapon threatened him, yet destiny possesses an uncanny unpredictability. Amidst the heated conflict, a nameless Syrian archer, devoid of intent, randomly released an arrow into the fray. The missile screamed through the atmosphere, hummed a dire premonition, weaved amidst soldiers and their defenses, pinpointing a vulnerability, the solitary flaw in the king's plate. Ahab recoiled violently. The brutal force nearly unseated him from his chariot. Searing blood gushed forth, crimsoning the steel, splashing onto the earth below. His sight dimmed fleetingly, and in that moment, understanding dawned. The scheme had crumbled. He might evade mortals, but never elude the Almighty. Agony surged, a searing inferno consuming his defenses. Ahab's gaze intensified, his breath shallow and frantic. He clutched at the gash, felt life seep through his grasp, recognizing the fatal blow. He was determined to stay upright, refusing to yield. Not in this place, not at this critical moment. Scrambling to his knees, he surveyed the chaotic scene. The battle raged relentlessly. Warriors succumbed, blades collided, and war cries resonated across the valley. His troops mustn't witness his injuries. The sight of their wounded king would ignite dread, jeopardizing the battle's outcome and sealing their premature defeat. Straining with every fiber, he seized the coachman's arm, his words a desperate rasp. "Brace me on the cart, keep me upright." The soldier, unhesitating, complied. The king was hoisted up, propped against the carriage's structure, his gaze locked onto the chaotic battlefield. Though his sight faltered, threatening to betray him, he stubbornly resisted oblivion. Crimson drenched his attire, cascading down his frame, etching scarlet rivulets along the transport. The hours advanced, the battle intensified, yet Ahab persevered. His physique quivered, his pulse hammered. Still he endured, clutching to the final vestige of authority, denying the immutable decree of his fate as the lifeblood relentlessly poured forth. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, igniting the sky with hues of fiery crimson and somber gray, his resolve crumbled just as the last glimmer vanished. His grip faltered, his fingers released their hold on the car's edge, and his head slumped to the side. A chilling stillness blanketed the war-torn landscape as the soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. The king had fallen, extinguishing Israel's wartime aspirations. Ahab's corpse journeyed back to Samaria. As twilight deepened, soldiers reached the city gates, bearing their fallen leader in his chariot. The arduous, dust-choked path remained eerily silent. The conflict had ended in absolute defeat. The demoralized army was crushed, not solely by the loss, but by their leader's grim destiny. The chariot lumbered through the city's entrance, groaning beneath the heaviness of mortality. Ahab's congealed blood lingered on the wood, trickling to create crimson patterns in the soil. The very chariot of the king's former triumphs became the somber theater of his demise. As the soldiers alighted and conveyed the body for preparation, the servants hauled the chariot to the pool of Samaria, a frequented well for equine ablutions. They lavished buckets of water upon the chariot, striving to expunge the ravages of battle, yet the blood persisted in its flow. Subsequently, the dogs materialized. Gaunt, with a famished aspect, they patrolled the perimeter of the pond, inhaling the metallic scent permeating the atmosphere. As the attendants averted their gaze, the beast surged ahead, ravenously consuming the king's blood with no reverence, unknowingly fulfilling an age-old prophecy. Generations prior, the prophet Elijah confronted Ahab and proclaimed with a booming voice, "In this very spot where canines lapped up Naboth's blood, so too shall they devour yours." And here at last, it transpired. The monarch desperately attempting to outrun destiny, the leader who hunted for oracles that would echo his desires, the king who disguised himself among his troops, vainly attempting to swindle his grim end. The hours drifted by, yet Ahab's demise loomed over Israel akin to a dense, impending storm. The throne, now vacant, still echoed with the heavy presence of his past. Yet the reckoning that commenced with him was destined to continue. His legacy was etched in history, not as a triumphant monarch, but as one who spurned reality until his dying breath. Intriguingly, the prophets shared a peculiar trait. Their pronouncements echoed beyond the present, imbued with the gravity of days to come, and divine pledges invariably materialized. Distant from opulent courts, removed from influential circles, Micaiah's fervent voice faded into obscurity, his name expunged from the chronicles. His destiny remains unwritten, unknown if he witnessed the unfolding future. Yet his potent prophecy materialized, etched forever in the minds of those who listened that fateful day. Concurrently, Ahab's lineage persisted tenuously upon the throne, yet their reign was fleeting. Jezebel, his indomitable queen, maintained her shadowy dominion, fiercely resisting the encroaching twilight. However, even the most resilient cannot ultimately defy fate. Approaching was a formidable man, defiant and unyielding, unmoved by intimidation, a leader, a fighter, a righteous adjudicator dispatched to liberate Israel from the grip of idol worship. This was Jehu, and as his steeds thundered toward the palace, the very foundations of Samaria trembled. The unavenged blood of Naboth still echoed from the ground, and divine retribution was poised to strike the house of Ahab. Jezebel, who erroneously believed herself beyond destiny's reach, would swiftly discover that no stronghold could offer refuge. To avert the impending doom, the thunderous cadence of horses' hooves reverberated through Samaria's streets, dust devils swirling as Jehu and his men surged forward relentlessly. The city, long complacent under Ahab's dynasty, sensed an ominous shift that day. It wasn't merely a change of rulers. It was divine retribution hammering at the gates. From her lofty perch in the palace, Jezebel observed, the queen who had subtly controlled, masterminded kings and decimated adversaries, perceived the approaching demise. Yet if Jezebel excelled at one thing, it was resilience. She meticulously prepared herself, accentuated her eyes with kohl, secured her crown, and stood resolutely by the window. As Jehu breached the city gates, her voice cut through the air like a sharpened dagger. "Is this a peaceful arrival, Zimri, you who slaughtered your master?" Jehu glanced up, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. She invoked the name of Zimri, a long-dead usurper who assassinated a king and briefly seized power for a mere week before his demise. Yet Jehu was no Zimri. He stood firm, unwavering, showing no trace of fear or doubt. "Who stands with me?" he roared. 2 or 3 eunuchs materialized behind Jezebel, servants, men once beholden to her, who had attended her during her triumphant reign. Yet now in her twilight, allegiance had withered away. "Cast her down!" And without a moment's hesitation, the eunuchs hurled her off the balcony. Her body slammed brutally onto the courtyard stones. Blood spattered the walls and stained the horses, and Jehu, unfazed by the carnage, pressed onward. Eventually, upon her interment, all that remained were her skull, feet, and hands. The hounds had executed their grim task. So was the divine prophecy brought to fruition. Thus concluded the saga of Ahab, Jezebel, and their empire constructed upon deceit and tyranny. As the echoes faded, Micaiah's pronouncements persisted through the ages. The unyielding prophet, unbowed and unbroken. The individual who embraced authenticity over security. Erased from official chronicles, his legacy persisted. For there will invariably be a sovereign craving only adulation. False oracles will perpetually emerge, peddling soothing deceptions. Yet individuals will forever rise, courageously voicing verity, regardless of the supreme sacrifice. Time marches on. Empires have risen and crumbled. Ahab and Jezebel's names now echo as cautionary tales of power once thought eternal, yet slipped away like dust. Samaria met its fate, Israel forged its path. But Micaiah? What became of the prophet who boldly spoke truth to deaf ears? Scripture remains silent. Following that fateful day within the throne room, his pronouncements were etched in history, yet his destiny faded into obscurity. Was liberation granted to him? Did he perish within the confines of a prison? Or did he persist in delivering oracles in some distant locale? The truth remains elusive, yet perhaps therein lies the profound wisdom. For Micaiah never craved accolades. He never tailored his prophecies to gain favor. He shunned personal fame, dedicating himself to unvarnished truth. Delivered fearlessly and decisively, consequences be damned. His tale underscores truth's independence from popular opinion. Standing defiant against 400 deceitful oracles, his singular voice resonated far more powerfully than their collective falsehoods. It reveals that integrity demands sacrifice. He might have echoed Ahab's desires, earning lavish praise and a cozy court position. Instead, he embraced imprisonment, scorn, and precariousness, and it underscores truth's inevitable triumph. Ahab attempted to outrun destiny, masking his identity, deceiving himself into believing he could outwit fate. Ultimately, the arrow sought him out. Divine pronouncements remained steadfast. Micaiah's historical trail might fade, yet his impactful message echoes eternally. His voice persists when individuals value authenticity over expediency, when they resist bowing to dominance, and when they grasp that regardless of society's affinity for comforting falsehoods, veracity eternally triumphs. If Micaiah's journey resonated with you, and you're eager to discover more inspiring narratives of faith and triumph, give this video a thumbs up and spread it to your loved ones. Naturally, subscribe to our channel to ensure you never miss fresh content. United, we'll delve deeper into the Bible's most compelling teachings.